Hi, my name is Valentina. I'm going to talk about the press freedom in Cuba. I'm going to give you a different context because this is a really popular topic, so I'm not going to give you a context about the politics, about the government of the island. I'm just going to talk about press freedom. This is my question. What is the relationship between the Cuban press and the state power? I'm going to study the specific case of Granma. So this is my outline. At first, I'm going to talk about the context of press freedom in Cuba. According to a list published by Reporters Without Borders, Cuba ranks 116th out of 180 countries in terms of world press freedom. According to this ranking, Cuba is the worst media freedom violator in Latin America. Well, as you already know, the political situation in Cuba is not easy. So the government of the regime keeps the information privately. They have the entire control of media, and because of their constitution, they prohibits privately owned media and independent media. That's why they have an entire monopoly of information and journalism. According to this ranking, the censorship and the harassment of independent and most important opposition media, it's really common. Now I'm going to explain you what is Granma. Granma is the most important element, the most important tool of the regime in terms of public opinion. It's the main element of dissemination, and it's the most important newspaper in Cuba. It has a lot of sections and alternatives for different audiences. So I'm going to show you this screenshot. This is a screenshot of the website of Granma. It has, you can see a lot of sections. It has Juventud Rebelde, Trabajadores, Cuba Debate. It has magazines, but this is not a different thing. Those are the kids of Granma, as for saying in that way. The ideological focus is faithful to the policies of the Cuban Revolutionary Party, and according to the website, this is how they define themselves. Promote through its articles and comments the work of the revolution and its principles, the conquest achieved by our people, and the integrity and cohesion of all our people, together with the party and Fidel. This is how they define themselves. As you can see and read of Granma, it's the regime the most important thing, and the principles of the Communist Party and Castro. According to an article made by Gallego and Rosabal about a study of agenda setting in Cuba, all the international information presented in Granma, it's not a reflection of Cuban reality. It's not an objective analysis of the internal problems that affect the majority of Cubans. The discourse of Granma, as you can see here, alluded to an anti-imperialist discourse. Let me see. Advocated for the class struggle and fight against fascism and right. The public opinion is really manipulated. And the roots of this problem are historical. They promote the work of the Cuban Revolution and its principles, and that's basically Granma. Okay, we're going to talk about press freedom versus state power. Well, there's no press freedom in Cuba. All the press is official, and according to the regime, the relationship between the state power and the press is evident. I'm going to read this bibliographic citation. The social and political context is in Cuba, it's very complex, not only because it cause ideological conflicts, but also because conditions within the country are challenging for Cubans themselves. Um, well, this is kind of important because, as you know, the explanation of this, sorry, the explanation of this paragraph is that the Cuban media doesn't not take into account the relationship between the public needs and their wishes. This is why this journalism is not a public service. This is a kind of government service. It's just a tool of the government, the journalism. Well, these are my conclusions. The public visibility that the media gives to politics is without a doubt prevalent in its contents. In fact, we could say that almost entire Cuban journalism is political and ideological. According to Callejo and Rosabal, I mentioned them before, the main problem is not that it's not the absence of topics, it's the centralized nature of the information in that island. Next conclusion, the Cuban press doesn't give a space to any other source of information. This is why, despite the different portals, the journalism monopoly is impenetrable. As I told you at the beginning of the presentation, in Cuba exists censorship and harassment for those journalists who wants to explore other kinds of journalism. My next conclusion is there are no spaces available for ideological diversity. This can lead to disinformation of the population and no different points of view and no debating citizenship. That I told you this before. The journalism in Cuba, it's not the reflection of the reality and there's no an objective analysis of the politics. That's why there's no press freedom in Cuba.